Welcome to NICU Stories. Hey, my NICU Story followers. How are you? We are back with another episode for March for Dads. Of course, we interview anybody, but this month I wanted to make sure that we are promoting dads very heavy. So on today's episode, we have a very special guest, Mike Alexander. How are you, Mike?
I'm doing well, Nikki. It's so good to talk to you again. I'm just excited to be here to share with you.
I'm so happy to have you. So he's actually, there's a lot of firsts right now, so y'all just gonna have to bear with me. But he's actually our first NICU story who is actually many years removed. His NICU baby just turned
24.
Woo!
Yeah.
So I'm interested to hear this story. So tell us all about your NICU experience with your wonderful 24-year-old.
Well, my story started 24 years ago, and it was quite of an experience because I was 17 at the time
Oh, wow.
that my son was born, Marquise. And it happened actually during a trauma where his mother, her cervix, she had problems with her cervix. So the baby was growing on her cervix. And so there was a lot of complications. And Marquise was born 3 months early. And the day that I got the call that she was rushed to the hospital, I was actually in church. And this is when, cell phones had just kind of entered the world.
Uh-huh.
And they called the church phone, and she was telling me, I'm in the hospital, the baby's coming. And I got immediately nervous. And I'm just like, it's not time yet. It's too early. So I get to the hospital, and the doctors are going over everything. They're monitoring her. They actually went to the point of laying her in the bed, but laying her head side down with her feet elevated, as to keep as much amniotic fluid within her uterus so that the baby could live. And they were telling us that there was a 50-50 chance that the baby might not live because there wasn't a lot of amniotic fluid in there for the baby to survive. And so within hours, they decided that we're going to have to take him out. And so that right there, I was so nervous and I was scared. And, as a man growing up, my father is like, a man's man. And for him to show emotion, we never really saw that. And I kind of adopted that, like, men aren't supposed to be emotional. We're not supposed to cry. And I was trying my best to, hold it down for the guys, but I was really nervous, and I was scared.
Yeah.
I was very scared. And they went in. I was in the room with her, and they got him out. And when they showed him to me, he was only 1 pound and 15 ounces.
Ooh,
and
peanut.
I literally held him in the palm of my hand. And when I first saw him, I was so shocked because, and I tease him to this day about it. I tell him that you look like a baby chimpanzee. You were all hairy. You were all hairy and just like this little like beige face, but you were just covered in hair. And he laughs about it. We joke about that today. However, from that moment on, for the next 3 months, it was a complete experience. And but we got through it. So the first week or couple weeks was kind of touch and go. The doctor told us that, babies during this particular trimester, this is where they're developing their lungs.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, he, fortunately, thank God, fortunately, Marquise, his lungs were fully developed. And so I told God, you know what, God, thank you.
That's a miracle.
Because yeah, there were other babies in the NICU unit that they were still, their lungs were still developing and they were having so many different issues. And it was just very, I was grateful to God for that particular thing. However, there were just other issues that occurred during that time. He had to be a certain weight
Mm-hmm.
before he was able to even leave the NICU unit. However, everything else had to, develop and grow.
Right,
And,
right.
during that whole experience, he increased weight. They had to feed him through his nose, a tube through his nose,
Mm-hmm.
and he increased weight, but then he would drop. And I
Drastic.
was so, yeah, drastically. And I was so nervous and scared. I was. And I mean, I'm a Christian. I believe in God. And at that point, I was just like, I don't know.
That's very
I don't
real.
know, God. This is one for me. And I was 17.
Right, on top of that.
And so I had a whole lot of different things going on. And being put in this situation to be a father at a young age, that in itself had
Yeah.
me shook.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Becoming a father at such a young age.
Right,
What
right,
am I going to do? You know, what am I? How am I going to be a father to my son? Is he going to have defects?
right,
How
right,
am I
right.
going to deal with that? There was
Wow.
just so many different questions going on in my head that I really didn't know how to process. However, every day that I went every day for those 3 months that he was in the
Oh,
hospital, every day. There was not a day that I missed because I did not. I just felt it was my duty
oh,
to him, as my son. And those days, the weeks, things became a little better. They had I believe she was like a therapist or something like that, and she would come in and she would speak to us, my son, my son's mother and I, and she would talk to us about what we were feeling
oh,
and and the possibilities of something happening where he may have a learning disability, or just his body may have different defects and things like that. Trying to encourage us that there are different avenues, there are different support groups
mm-hmm.
for us to join, and to just be encouraged that the life of this child does not have to end at a defect. It can go way beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very grateful for that because that helped a lot. And even during that, I was praying, like, God, please, you know,
Right,
please.
right, right.
I would love to have my son to be normal. And if he isn't, God, allow me to love my son for that, just for who he is. And I thank you for giving him to me.
Right.
And we got through it. We got through a lot of the difficult part, and it was just a blessing. And if I could say to the fathers that are listening to this, that are going through the NICU experience, you know, if you don't know God the way that I knew God, or I know God, you just have to really. I would encourage you to try to know Him, and then trust those who he has given over this type of situation. Trust your doctors.
Right.
Ask questions.
Right.
Express your concerns.
Right. Right.
You know, do your research against what the doctors are telling you, because you just want to be well informed and well educated
That's
in
good.
what different experiences. Even this podcast for NICU fathers and parents. This is good because it actually allows others who are going through it to hear different experiences,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it encourages them. And it was a great experience. We he was released in the month of May, uh, and it was so great. We actually joined when we left. We had a party. You know, my family. We will celebrate anything, any reason to come together to eat
It's true.
and to have a good time.
Uh-huh.
And so we had a get together. Of course, him being just released from the hospital, he was 6 pounds when he was released from the
Oh,
hospital.
wow.
So he was still very small, but to me, he was a full size baby
Yeah, in
for
comparison, right?
exactly to how he was, the weight that he was born at. And of course, we had the celebration, but we still had to be mindful because, he was still so small. And so, I guess susceptible to a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we only were able to stay for a little bit at that celebration. Then we had to bring him back home.
Mm-hmm.
And even after that, the children that were in the NICU unit for that period of time, we had a reunion probably towards the end of that year, just to get back with everybody, to see the growth that the children went through and everything. And it was good to see everybody. Everybody was well. The children were well. And it was
That's so
just an
good.
encouraging, yeah, it was an encouraging experience. One of the children that were in there during that time, he had to have open heart surgery.
Wow.
It was an incredible experience. We were in there and they made everyone leave because they had to do the surgery right there.
Oh,
And it was an experience. It was scary. And I know his parents were scared too. And they even talked about that, but
right.
at the time of the reunion, it was a celebration of life because you would never think looking at him, you
Right.
would never think, even in my son, looking at him now, you would never think that he was born premature. And
Right.
so
Right.
I want to encourage, all the fathers that are out there and all the mothers that are listening, if you're in the NICU unit and your child is in there, there is definitely life. There is definitely hope because once they get through it, these babies are fighters.
Yes, they are.
There's something that's in them that's fighting, and they're just fighting because I just feel that their destiny is bringing them, it's calling them to the place where they're supposed to be, and so
Come
they're
on.
fighting through this little problem for them, but
Right.
it they definitely come through. And even after, like months later, as he began to grow, he never showed signs of any defects or
Oh,
anything
that's a
like that.
beautiful.
As a parent to your child, you always, you say like, "Good God," sometimes I wonder about you, because they get into so many different things, but
Right.
all in all, he's a very smart and intelligent young man. And I mean, he had to get there. He's 24 now, and there's still a lot of things that he has to, grow into maturing as he gets older. But overall, he's a great kid.
And he's an
Great kid.
incredible artist too. Like his pen is incredible.
Absolutely. And I mean, I can't. I mean, it comes. I guess it passes down through me because I'm a creative person. I'm a designer and an artist at heart, and it flows through him. And some of the things that he even shares with me, it blows my mind.
Right, right,
And I'm like, God, this young man that you blessed me with, his story started off very traumatic,
right,
but then it ends up in a great place.
right, right,
And I'm just very grateful.
right. So how did his mom respond to his NICU experience?
His mother, she was more nervous than me,
Yeah, I can
more
imagine.
nervous, more nervous. than me. This was her uh, third child,
Mm-hmm.
but never all of her births before that were just normal, 9-month terms. And she was very nervous, and she would always say to me, "You seem like you're not nervous, like you're not bothered at all." And I would tell her, "I am nervous, but I believe in God, and I believe that He's going to bring our child through,
That's
you
good.
know, this situation." And there were things that, I had to understand as a father what a mother goes through
Right,
when
right,
her child is in distress,
right, right,
you
right,
know. And I guess my mother told me, "Michael, you have to understand the connection or the bond between a mother and a child. She had this baby in her,
mm-hmm.
and she felt his movement, and she felt all these different things.
Right,
So
right,
to see him in this place of distress, you have to be sympathetic and empathetic to her,
right,
that this is her child too,
right.
and she needs you to understand and be there for her and pray for her, that God gives her strength to get through this."
Right. Do you feel like you had to suppress your emotions or suppress feeling anything, or did you have to make yourself go into like tunnel vision because you wanted to be there for her and be supportive to her?
I did suppress a lot of my emotions when I was around her,
Mm-hmm.
because I needed to be that strength for her.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to be, you know, because she was broken.
Mm.
She was broken, and she felt that it was her fault.
Yeah.
And
A lot of times we do.
there, I mean, yeah, there was an incident that happened that we found out, well, prior to Marquise being born, that we found out later that caused the issue for
Oh.
him being born. And she was very upset at it,
Mm-hmm.
and she felt that it was her fault. And I would encourage her that, there are things that go beyond our control. Sometimes there are things that we can't control, but Marquise was born at this time for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason may not only just be for us, but it can be for somebody else. So
Right.
how we get through this, and how we come out of this, is only going to help somebody else who was in it,
Right. Right.
or in it, or is in it. And
Right.
I have to say that we actually had some help, because my aunt had just had Danielle. She was born premature,
Mm-hmm.
uh, probably a couple of years later. So her experience, she
Right.
was
Right.
there like constantly, letting us know, hey, this is what you need to expect.
That's
This is
good.
what's going to happen. And you see Danielle now. She's You would never even know.
Never even know. And she's a whole teacher.
A whole teacher, a
Right.
whole
Right.
teacher,
Right.
and a beautiful young lady.
Right, right, right. So for all the listeners, Mike is actually my husband's cousin, and his son is, they're all family, and Danielle is my husband's sister. So they say that prematurity doesn't, isn't hereditary, but it's been very common in your family. Um,
Yes,
Even though it's not hereditary, it's the strangest thing, but it has
I
been
know.
pretty common and happened. And it's good that you had that village. Like I was
Mhm.
saying too, Justin's uncle, that you had that village, to that cloud of witness to help you get through the process. And a lot of people don't have that. And a
Absolutely.
lot of times you end up going through the NICU experience alone. I love the fact that you mentioned there was a therapist who came in to ask you guys, how are you doing? Because that's not something very common right now. I didn't experience it with either one of my children. And this is
Wow.
many years later. And a lot of the parents that I've spoken to, I've asked, like, have you had a therapist? Was a therapist part of your care team? Was there a counselor? And a lot of people say the nurses were. The nurses were their counselor. The nurses were the ones who supported them. But not one time did anyone ask me if I was okay. And I love the fact that you did have that, because a lot of times with the dads, no one's asking dad, like, are you okay? Even though you're suppressing your feelings, like, are you okay?
And I was very grateful that she was there and she asked, because normally as a man, you just don't divulge your feelings.
Right, right,
And it's, that's just something a man doesn't. He just doesn't willingly divulge his feelings, because then he might be taken as, being a punk or whatever like that, or however.
right, right,
But it was very good for me to express those emotions. And I think in that time, her asking me was I how I was feeling helped me release all of the emotions that was going on inside, that way that I could at least get some feedback on, how to move forward. But not only
right.
that,
That's
but
good.
it allowed me to release it, get it out of my system, and then to be strengthened for
That's so
for my son's mother, and it was the definite help. And those who are going through, the fathers that are going through this situation, I would definitely encourage you to see if the hospital or something like that has someone that you can talk to,
right, right,
to express your feelings, because man, we have feelings.
right. Exactly, and they matter.
And they matter. They
And they
actually
matter.
matter.
And even though, you guys aren't the ones who carry, you're not the ones who build that bond, how you're feeling and how you're processing this definitely matters, because, it's two of us. We both created this human being, and
Yes,
we're both going through the NICU together. So I think dads matter just as much as the moms, even though dads don't carry. Dads still are coverings. Dads are still shepherds. This is still their child. So it's just as
exactly.
important. So I'm glad that you shared that you had that village and you had that support system, and how having that support system and a therapist talking to you helped you navigate through this journey of the NICU,
Yes,
and to be a support to his mom. This is the end result that we want to see, and we want to see more of this. So we need to be
absolutely.
advocates for that they have, like, people just become more of a community for other NICU parents, and that therapists are part of that care team, because it's needed. And you're a prime example of the benefits of having a therapist on a care team. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that. One last question. I know you said you're strong in faith and that you're a Christian. Would you say it was only solely your faith that got you through that process, and a therapist? Was there anything else that you did to help you navigate through it? Like, some people, they found healing or therapy through cooking or writing, journaling, and stuff like that. Like, was there anything else that you did to help the process?
At that point, because I was still so young and trying to find myself,
Uh huh.
uh, at that point, all I knew was to pray in faith. So
Yeah,
that basically brought me through, getting through the entire process and even beyond that.
I love it.
And as I grew along with my son, I did find other outlets to even help me to be a father
Mm-hmm.
for my son. Of course, I had my father to lean upon and bear witness with, and other things, but there were other men that
Mm-hmm.
were around that were there to help me, to show me that this is something that you were blessed with, that you created, and
Right.
so you have to nurture it until it's able to bear for himself and do
Right.
for himself. And I was not perfect. I
And
was
you
still
wouldn't be at
young.
17.
No, I was still young. There were times where I wanted to be 17, 18, and but thank God for the village, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it definitely helped me in helping to raise my son.
Wow. Such an incredible story. And the fact that you were so young experiencing
I
something is
know.
so traumatic. Most of us are much older experiencing the NICU, but experiencing the NICU at 17 years old. And I like how you mentioned how you felt. It was like, I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to be a dad, but now I have to be a dad
Yes.
to a baby in the NICU, and I don't even know if he's going to survive and make it through the NICU. So I'm so glad that you talked about that and shared that aspect of how you felt. That was really really good, and I thank you so much for tuning in, what jumping on with us and sharing your story. And you're
You're
also
welcome.
a phenomenal designer. I want to hear all about that.
Uh, well, from a young child, I had the desire to be a designer. I was always into art and fashion. And I told my mother all the time, I blame you for for this because me and my sister, she would take us to Bloomingdale's and to Saks and to Nordstrom's and even sometimes to Bergdorf's. Um, every weekend we would go and she would show us different things and different cultures that we can experience these things. And I've always been drawn to that. And from a young child, from a young little lad, I started designing, started sketching, and you know, going from there. And years later, being a knucklehead in school, I wasn't able to do what I really wanted to do. But God has still been faithful, and He blessed me to officially start my my brand, Major.
Love it.
Um, and
Spelled.
it's MAJR. It's actually my initials, Michael Alexander Jr.
I
And
love it.
so it's Major, and it is Major. uh, it's just been a blessing, and yeah,
So I
and I'm just
absolutely
excited.
love that this is where you are in life, and something so traumatic did not deter you, but it made you an amazing father. And you now have a 24-year-old
I
success
know,
story. NICU
and
success
he's
story.
yes, and he's actually uh, a legacy to this. He's
Exactly.
actually helping me in some of my designing, so
Love
it works
it.
great. It
I
works
love
great.
it. I love it. I
Yep.
love it. So hopefully we'll get you guys to design some NICU store maybe yeah, no, NICU stories
That that
apparel
exactly.
for our
That would be
babies.
awesome.
Yeah, let's go. We're gonna have to hire you to be a designer for us. I love it.
Oh, it
And
would be
this
my
is
pleasure.
Oh, that would be wonderful. It's actually in the works though. So I'm so glad we just mentioned that.
Hey,
So I'm excited for you guys. I'm excited. So how can anyone follow you and follow what you and your son are doing in the clothing industry?
at this point, we are definitely on Instagram, and the Instagram tag is Major Official. So that's MAJR Official, and you can find the page there. Uh, Restructuring the entire brand. So the website is to come. There's going to be much more. You can also go on Facebook. We have a page as well, which is MAJR Major, and you can look it up and follow and look at the designs that I've done in the past. And we've got some great things getting ready to come out.
I'm so
It's going to
excited.
be really exciting, really exciting.
I'm so
So
excited. Let's go. Well, thank you so much, Michael Alexander, for tuning in with us and sharing your story with the NICU
thank you
community,
for
with the
having
youth.
me.
We appreciate you. We value everything that you have brought to us and sharing your emotions and just being transparent, open with us. We really do appreciate it. And I pray that it's a blessing to other fathers and other NICU dads and PICU dads. And, this journey to parenthood isn't always easy. Some people, it
No.
just happens so naturally, but there's others where there's a bit of a fork in the road and it takes
Yes.
us a little longer in this journey and a little bump sometimes, but we get through it and we're that cloud of
Yes.
witness. So I'm so grateful for you sharing your story with us for the March for
Hey.
Dads. Thank you again. And thank you to all my
You're
NICU
welcome.
Story followers for tuning in and listening. Make sure you go follow Major Official on Instagram and Facebook. You can also follow us on NICU.stories on Instagram. Follow us on NICU Stories on Facebook. And if you would like to be a member, if you would like to share your story on NICU Stories, definitely email us at admin@nicustories.com. Thanks again. Have a great day, guys.